Quick question. Why does your history textbook spend 40 pages on trade routes, but 0 pages on the time a pope put a dead pope on trial, or the laughter epidemic, or the molasses flood, or the soldier who kept fighting a war for 29 years after it ended? These things happened. They are real, and nobody put them in the textbook, probably for legal reasons. Today, 10 weird history facts, in order of weirdness, starting mildly unusual and ending somewhere in the vicinity of what? Fact number 1. The ancient Romans used urine as mouthwash and it worked. Urine contains ammonia, which actually does whiten teeth and kill bacteria. Romans collected it in public jugs outside bathhouses, and people would buy it specifically to rinse their mouths. There was a urine tax. Caesar's finance minister literally taxed pee and used the revenue to fund the empire. And before you say that's disgusting, your toothpaste contains synthetic ammonia. So, they also used it to do laundry. Fullers, the ancient Roman dry cleaners, would stomp your clothes in vats of fermented urine. Customers dropped off their togas, picked them up the next day. Sparkling clean, 0 questions asked. Different times. Fact number 2. Abraham Lincoln was, and I want to be precise here, a near undefeated wrestling champion. Before he was president. Before he was a lawyer. He was just a young man in Illinois with extremely long arms and an extremely high win percentage. He competed for roughly 12 years, won approximately 300 matches, and lost maybe 1. Officially, the records are disputed. He was inducted into the National Wrestling Hall of Fame in 1992, 127 years after his assassination. Which means somewhere in a museum in Oklahoma there is a Hall of Fame plaque for Abraham Lincoln that says, Outstanding American, 16th President, Phenomenal Grappler. Fact number 3. Napoleon Bonaparte, feared conqueror of Europe, destroyer of armies, man who crowned himself emperor, was once attacked by rabbits. In 1807, after signing the treaties of Tilsit, Napoleon decided to celebrate with a rabbit hunt. His chief of staff gathered the rabbits, hundreds of them, all in cages, ready to be released. The cages opened. The rabbits charged. Not away from Napoleon, at Napoleon, because they were domesticated rabbits that associated humans with food, and now there were hundreds of them, swarming toward the most powerful man in Europe, while his marshals desperately tried to beat them back with whips. Napoleon retreated to his carriage. The rabbits followed. He had to leave. He lost. Fact number 4. During World War II, the United States accidentally bombed Switzerland. Neutral Switzerland. 5 times. The Swiss were not in the war. They had been very publicly not in the war. And yet American bombers, between 1943 and 1945, dropped bombs on Swiss towns on multiple occasions. Basel, Schaffhausen, various smaller villages. The official explanations included navigation errors, bad weather, and pilots being confused about which country they were flying over. Switzerland responded each time with formal diplomatic protests that translated roughly to what is happening, please stop. The U.S. eventually paid $4 million in damages, which, for bombing a neutral country 5 times, is a fairly reasonable settlement, all things considered. Fact number 5. On January 15, 1919, a storage tank in Boston exploded and released 2.3 million gallons of molasses into the street. The wave was 15 feet tall. It traveled at 35 miles per hour. It snapped steel supports off an elevated railway. It picked up horses. 21 people died. 150 were injured. Buildings were demolished. Locals claimed that for decades afterward, on hot summer days, you could still smell molasses in that neighborhood. The cleanup took roughly 80,000 man-hours. The lawsuit that followed lasted 6 years. And the company that owned the tank, United Industrial Alcohol, had been warned multiple times the tank was leaking. Their response was to paint it brown, so the leaks were harder to see. Fact number 6. In July 1518, in Strasbourg, a woman named Frau Trophia walked into the street and began to dance. She danced without stopping for 6 days. No music. No reason anyone could explain. Within a week, 34 more people had joined her. Within a month, approximately 400 people were dancing involuntarily in the streets of Strasbourg. Some of them died of exhaustion, heart attacks, and strokes. The local physicians, applying the medical knowledge of 1518, concluded the cure was more dancing. They hired musicians. They built a stage. This made it worse. The dancing spread to neighboring villages. It stopped on its own, for no discernible reason. About 2 months later, no one knows why it started. No one knows why it stopped. Fact number 7. On August 15, 1945, Japan surrendered and World War II ended. Not for Hiroo Onoda. Onoda was a Japanese intelligence officer stationed in the Philippine jungle. He received no official surrender orders, and because his military training told him never to abandon his post without direct orders from his commanding officer, he kept fighting. alone, in the jungle, for 29 years. The Philippine and Japanese governments both tried to contact him. They dropped leaflets from planes explaining the war was over. He assumed they were enemy propaganda. He fought a guerrilla campaign against Filipino civilians and police until 1974, when his former commanding officer, now a bookseller in Tokyo, flew to the Philippines to personally relieve him of duty. Onoda stood at attention, saluted, and handed over his sword, his rifle, and 500 rounds of ammunition he had somehow kept in working order. Fact number 8. In the year 897, Pope Stephen VI had his predecessor, Pope Formosus, dug up. Formosus had been dead for approximately 9 months. Stephen had the decomposing body dressed in papal vestments, seated on a throne in a courtroom, and formally charged with various crimes against the church. This is called the Cadaver Synod. A deacon was appointed to speak on behalf of the corpse. The corpse was found guilty. Its papal vestments were removed. 3 fingers on the right hand used for blessings were cut off. The body was thrown into the Tiber River. Pope Stephen then ordered all ordinations performed by Formosus to be declared invalid, which created significant administrative problems for the church. Shortly after, the Roman population revolted, imprisoned Stephen, and strangled him in his cell. Make of that what you will. Fact number 9. In January 1962, at a boarding school in Kishasha, Tanzania, 3 girls started laughing. And could not stop. The laughter spread. Within days, the entire school was affected. 95 students were sent home. This did not contain it. The laughter followed them home. It spread to their families, then to nearby villages, then to other schools. 14 schools were closed. Approximately 1,000 people were affected. The laughing fits lasted anywhere from a few minutes to 16 days. Affected individuals also reported crying, fainting, rashes, and pain. It took 18 months to fully subside. The leading theory is mass psychogenic illness, a stress response where one person's symptoms trigger the same symptoms in others. The runner-up theory is, nobody knows. Fact number 10, which I have saved for last because it is, technically, one of the reasons the British Empire exists the way it does. In 1731, a British sea captain named Robert Jenkins was boarded by Spanish coast guards in the Caribbean. During the encounter, a Spanish officer cut off Jenkins' ear. Jenkins kept the ear in a jar. 7 years later, in 1738, Jenkins appeared before the British Parliament. He produced the jar. He presented his ear to the members of Parliament as evidence of Spanish aggression. Parliament, moved by this display, voted to declare war on Spain. The war lasted 9 years. It merged into the War of the Austrian Succession, which lasted another 8 years after that. It cost tens of thousands of lives. It reshaped colonial trade across 3 continents, and the inciting incident was a man showing a room full of politicians his ear in a jar. Here is the thing about weird history. These facts get left out of textbooks not because they are unimportant, but because they are too human. Empires collapse because of rabbits. Soldiers refuse to stop because loyalty outlasts context. Entire populations dance themselves to death because stress takes whatever exit it can find. And parliamentary democracies go to war because someone kept a body part in a jar for 7 years and then produced it at exactly the right moment. The boring version of history is the one where decisions make sense in retrospect. The real version involves a lot more jars. That is it. In simple terms, subscribe if you want more of this, or don't. I am not a jar.